I stood in a dim corner of the ballroom, watching a couple sway on the dance floor. Their eyes were locked on each other, and as he pulled her closer, I could see her chest rise and fall, her small frame pressed tightly against his larger one. They moved gracefully, he with the ease of an athlete, and she following in step perfectly. All eyes were on them, sensing an emotional connection between them. Not love, maybe, but something more than simple friendship. Her honey blonde hair cascaded down as she leaned into him, though it was clear it was more his strong grip than her choice. I might have felt envious of their bond if the woman wasn't my wife of 11 years, now in the arms of her boss. Instead, what I felt was anger, mixed with humiliation. It wasn't the first time we'd been to one of her company's banquets, but this one felt different. Everyone knew she was married to me, and yet I could see people searching for me, probably wondering when the confrontation would happen. After a few dances, they left the floor and rejoined some colleagues at a table. She looked at him the way she used to look at me, but it had been a long time since I'd seen that kind of passion from her. The frustration boiled up inside me, and all I could think about was how close I was to breaking. I wanted to lash out, but instead, I tried to hold on a little longer. For months, I had been fighting to win her back, to fix the cracks in our marriage. I organized special date nights, helped around the house, turned off the TV to actually talk with her, but she'd always just walk away. I bought flowers, wrote heartfelt notes, even sent gifts to her work, but none of it mattered. Every gesture ended up in the trash or ignored. I couldn't understand what more I could do, but I kept holding out hope that things would change. Pushing my thoughts aside, I headed toward the bar in the corner, standing behind Jenna, one of Kelsey's old work friends. "Having a good time?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Always," Jenna replied, sipping her drink. "These company events are a good excuse for free booze." I nodded, raising my empty glass. "Me too. By the way, have you seen Mark's wife around?" "I don't think I've spotted her," I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Oh, didn't you hear?" she said, a bit too loudly. "He served her with divorce papers today." Guess she wasn't holding up her end of the marriage. Jenna was tipsy, and her words were careless. "No, I hadn't heard," I lied. Kelsey hadn't mentioned anything, even though we had plenty of time to talk on the way here. She'd had all afternoon. I refilled my whiskey and grabbed a glass of wine for Kelsey before walking over to where she and her boss, Brian, stood. They were deep in conversation and didn't even notice me coming up. "Here's your wine," I said, handing it to her. She jumped slightly, startled. "Oh, thanks, look," she said, taking the glass and giving me a quick smile. But the warmth I used to feel from her was gone. The tension was thick. People were starting to notice, avoiding eye contact, pretending to look busy. One guy, probably in his 20s, caught my eye and gave me a grin, but quickly looked away, embarrassed. By the time the clock hit 1 a.m., most of the guests had already left the hotel ballroom, but Kelsey wasn't in a hurry to leave. She seemed content staying with Brian a little longer. I glanced at my watch, trying to signal that it was time. "We should get going. We still need to drop the babysitter off, and we promised we wouldn't be out too late," I said, not hiding my frustration. Kelsey hesitated, but eventually agreed. "Okay, yeah, time to head out." Relief spread through the room, as if the tension was finally lifting. "Brian, good seeing you," I added, offering my hand. His grip was firm, maybe too firm, and there was a silent tension between us. He was taller than me, heavier too, and I could feel him trying to assert himself in that handshake. After a brief exchange of goodbyes, Kelsey and I made our way out. The car ride home was silent, but I couldn't help noticing the faint smile on Kelsey's face. Once home, she checked on our 9-year-old daughter, Lily, while I paid the babysitter. When I returned, she was already in bed. I sighed, heading to the guest room for the night. Any hope of closeness had been pushed far out of reach. The next morning, I woke up early, mentally running through my to-do list for the weekend. I spotted Lily in the living room, already watching her favorite show. "Have you had breakfast yet?" I asked, giving her a small wave. "Have you had breakfast yet?" I asked. "Yep," Lily confirmed, waving her spoon in the air, milk dripping from it and splattering onto the carpet. "All right, settle down. Mom's still asleep, and I've got to get some work done in my office," I reminded her. Got it, Dad, she replied, her voice unnecessarily loud, making me chuckle. Around 8:30, I picked up the phone and dialed my lawyer's cell, knowing he often worked from home on Saturday mornings. Good morning, Bill. It's Luke Tanner, I greeted him. Morning, Luke. I'm guessing this isn't a friendly chat, he replied, already sensing the purpose of the call. You got it. It's time to put the plan in motion. I've learned that Brian served his wife with divorce papers yesterday. Any idea if Kelsey has consulted with a lawyer yet? I haven't heard, but I'll double-check. Let's meet at the coffee shop in about half an hour. Make sure to sign and date the forms with my assistant first thing Monday morning, so we can serve her at lunch. Bill outlined the plan. Sounds good. See you soon. I confirmed before ending the call. I arrived at the coffee shop a little early, offering a faint smile to the barista before collecting my order and settling into a chair near the fireplace. I stared blankly into my cup, lost in thought. I never thought it would come to this, divorcing the woman I once believed was the love of my life. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when you realize your life is unraveling. For me, it all started with a traffic ticket, one of those automatic camera citations for running a red light. When the ticket arrived in the mail, I chuckled at first, knowing it had to be Kelsey. She always forgot to turn on her headlights when she was in a hurry. I opened the envelope, my smile fading as I stared at the photo. Instead of confronting her, I sat in silence, tears welling up. In the photo, you could see Kelsey driving, but there was a man's arm and shoulder in the passenger seat. His face wasn't visible, but I didn't need to see it. I knew who it was. Nothing seemed suspicious at first. It could have been a lunch meeting or something innocent. I checked the date, March 5th, and something about it bothered me. I thought back to our text messages from that day. Kelsey had told me she was stopping by her friend Rachel's house after work to pick up some clothes for Lily. At the time, I hadn't questioned it. Rachel was always generous like that. But when I looked up the intersection on Google Maps, it was on the complete opposite side of town from where Rachel lived. Still, I tried to convince myself that it wasn't a big deal. But as the months went by, things started to add up. Since late November, Kelsey had become more distant, and by January, our arguments became more frequent. Affection disappeared, and most of our conversations were about work or Lily. We didn't talk about our future, our plans, or even take vacations together anymore. Since I was young, I've had a trust fund. My great-grandfather purchased land in the Pacific Northwest, selling it off as the town grew. When he passed, the trust was split among the family, and I inherited part of it. Over time, the fund grew, especially after my father passed away. By the time both my parents were gone, I'd merged everything into one account. Thanks to the money, Kelsey and I never had to worry about finances. We continued to work and save, preparing for an easy retirement. Early in our marriage, I'd gotten a prenuptial agreement to protect the trust. Throughout the years, we updated our prenup and wills regularly. One clause stayed the same, the divorce terms clearly outlining who owned what. There was also a provision for Lily's education, in case something happened to me or in the event of a divorce. As the situation with Kelsey continued to weigh on me, I reached out to Bill for advice. He wasn't too worried about financial issues given our prenup, but he suggested I prepare for what could come next. I wasn't ready to take any drastic steps yet, but I wanted to know my options. Well, Luke, Bill said during one of our talks, you could always hire a private investigator to look into things. They could figure out if there's really something going on. Unfortunately, all the PIs I trust are booked up for the next few weeks. I don't think I can wait that long, Bill. This is keeping me up at night. Do we have any other options? There's one possibility, Bill replied cautiously. But he's not exactly the most trustworthy guy. We call him Larry the Rogue. I chuckled. Why the nickname? Well, Larry's a former cop who got booted off the force for some shady dealings. He's trying to turn over a new leaf, but let's just say his methods are unconventional. He can start right away, but I wouldn't rely on him long-term. I just need answers, Bill. Is he legit? He's good at what he does, photos, videos, phone records. Some of it might be a bit on the edge of legality, but his findings are usually solid proof one way or another. All right, I sighed. As long as it's legal, let's use him for now, and we can switch to someone else later if needed. I paused. lost in thought before asking, "Do you think he can get started today?" "I'll give him a call and let you know." "I'll keep you posted here from the office," Bill replied. I spent the rest of the morning handling paperwork for both my lawyer and the investigator. I made sure to coordinate everything with my accountant and kept the retainer fee separate from my personal accounts so Kelsey wouldn't catch wind of anything. The last thing I wanted was to tip her off if this was all just a rough patch we could still fix. While these legal matters progressed, I kept up my efforts to mend our relationship. Over the years, I'd learned that drastic changes in someone's behavior usually had deeper reasons. Unsure of what was driving Kelsey's actions and whether we were beyond saving, I did everything I could to fulfill my role as a loving husband. I showered her with affection and tried to be more attentive than ever. But my efforts were met with rejection at every turn. Each cold response made it clear we were approaching a breaking point that might not be reversible. One Thursday afternoon, I received a call from Bill, asking me to come by the office to review the findings from the investigator. I didn't expect what was about to unfold. The investigator, Larry the Rogue, as Bill called him, had compiled hours of footage documenting Kelsey's affair. The evidence was overwhelming. Videos of their intimate moments, photos of them laughing together, even call logs and personal messages. Larry's methods, while questionable, were certainly effective. I sat there, shocked and disgusted, as the truth hit me hard. The idea of Kelsey being with Brian, her boss, was something I never wanted to believe. But now, with all this evidence laid out in front of me, I couldn't deny it. Brian was tall, athletic, and successful, qualities that may have drawn her in. A former college baseball star whose career was cut short by injury, Brian had worked his way up the corporate ladder, becoming head of Kelsey's department a year ago. With all the time they spent together, I suppose it was inevitable, but I never thought she'd let him come between us. The weight of the betrayal crushed me. My chest tightened, and I struggled to breathe. Leaning forward in my chair, I tried to steady myself, taking deep breaths to keep from breaking down right there in Bill's office. The emptiness inside me was overwhelming. I had lost my partner, my confidant, the mother of my child, and there was nothing left to hold on to. Then, as if the situation couldn't get worse, Bill played a recording from the day before. It was Kelsey and Brian discussing their future together. The recording was crystal clear. "Do you really love me?" Kelsey's voice sounded excited, almost hopeful. "Yes, of course. You're perfect, and I love you." "I want us to be a family," Brian responded. "You mean you, me, and Lily?" "Exactly." "What about Luke and Shannon?" he asked, referring to his own wife. "We'll divorce them. You'll have Lily, and we'll be happy together," Brian replied, his voice filled with certainty. There was a long pause as Kelsey processed his words. "You really love me?" she asked again. "Yes, I love you more than anything. Luke can't give you what I can. You'll be part of the elite, experiencing things he could never provide. You'll be the center of attention, the belle of every ball." The disdain in his voice cut through me. I could picture his arrogant face as he spoke, dismissing me like I was nothing. But then Kelsey said something that surprised me. "What about Lily? Losing her would destroy him." "She's his whole world," Kelsey said, her tone now tinged with concern. Brian was dismissive. "I'll be a better father than he could ever be. In a year, she won't even want to visit him." "Why do you hate him so much? What did he ever do to you?" she asked, clearly puzzled. "He's not good enough for you, Kelsey. He's stuck in place, content to stay mediocre. He's just a plant manager, overseeing a few hundred people. Did you know his facility has the highest production per square foot? He's a cog in someone else's machine, and he's happy with that." I felt a flicker of pride when Kelsey defended me, even though the conversation was happening in a hotel room instead of our home. "He's not weak, Brian. You don't know his story. He ran with some rough crowds growing up, but he chose a different path. He's stronger than you realize, and you shouldn't underestimate him," Kelsey warned. "Promise me you won't resort to violence. I don't want anyone getting hurt. Matt for Lily's sake, and you for mine," she added. But Brian pressed on. "I love you, Kelsey, and I wish it were still Luke. But he's not the man he used to be. You've replaced him as the one I love," she admitted quietly. She paused, thinking. "How will it work when we divorce them?" she asked. "We'll time it together. I'll serve Shannon first. Given her mental health and the fact we haven't been together in over a year, it won't be difficult. I'll split everything 50-50. She's not likely to put up much of a fight. Okay, but you have to file first. I want you to handle Shannon before I consult with a lawyer, Kelsey said, sounding resolute, clearly wanting to secure her future before making any drastic moves. At that point, I'd heard enough. Turn it off, I muttered to Bill. Listening any further felt pointless. I slumped in my chair, trying to wrap my mind around everything I'd just heard. You need to act first, Luke, Bill said firmly. Don't wait. If you hesitate, you'll lose everything. But what if she changes her mind? I asked weakly, clinging to some last shred of hope. They rarely do, Luke, Bill responded solemnly. I'm afraid there's nothing left you can say or do to change her mind. I observed Larry, the investigator, closely for the first time. He appeared to be in his 30s, fit, and dressed in an impeccably tailored suit, quite different from what I'd imagined. He was respectful and surprisingly insightful. As I got to know him, he started to feel more like Larry, a professional, rather than the rogue investigator I'd expected. Despite being paid for his services, it seemed he genuinely cared about what he was doing. Would you still want her after knowing all this? Larry asked, echoing Bill's earlier sentiments. You're probably right, Larry, I acknowledged, turning to Bill. Give me a day or two to think it over, and I'll be in touch. All right, sounds good, Luke. Should we go ahead and draft the documents now and finalize the details later, or halt the process if needed? Bill proposed. Yeah, let's proceed that way, I agreed. Larry handed me his business card as we wrapped up. Here's my personal number, Mr. Tanner. Call me anytime you need anything. Please, Larry, call me Luke, I insisted. Thank you, Luke. And if you decide to pursue revenge, well, I know some folks who could help with that. They don't call me Larry the Rogue for nothing, he remarked with a sly grin. I appreciated the offer, but felt uncertain. Nice meeting you, Larry. I'll reach out if I need help, though I doubt I could go through with anything like that against Kelsey. But it's good to know I have options, I replied with a small smile. Larry smiled, gave a nod, and left in his car. Over the weekend, I wrestled with my decision, unable to focus on anything else. Kelsey seemed completely unaware of the turmoil brewing, as if she had already decided our family's future without a second thought. Doubt, anger, fear, and disappointment weighed heavily on me. I couldn't shake the thought of that arrogant man, Brian, raising my daughter. It was hard to accept. The emotions swirling inside me left me in a fog until Sunday morning when, sitting on the back porch nursing a headache, clarity finally hit. I realized that this was inevitable, no matter how much I resisted. I had already lost my wife and family. Now it was just a matter of deciding how it would end, and on whose terms. The saying lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way ran through my mind. I wasn't going to step aside or follow Kelsey and Brian's plan. There was only one option, to take control of the situation myself. On Monday morning, I called Bill. Bill, it's Luke Tanner. Good morning, Luke. Have you come to a decision? He asked. Yes. I want you to complete all the necessary paperwork, using the legal photos Larry obtained. Split everything evenly. I paused. Do you think we should sell the house? Yes, Bill replied. We used a low-interest loan from your trust to buy it. So in a sense, you've been paying yourselves all along. We'll divide the proceeds from the sale, but you'll repay the full loan and the interest. Also, I added, I want to allocate $200,000 from my trust to Kelsey. It's a considerate payment for her years of support. It might soften her stance if she knows she won't be left with nothing. I'm seeking primary custody of Lily. I know it won't be easy, but maybe Larry can dig up something on Brian that makes him look less suitable as a father figure. I've heard rumors about his wild college days. Maybe there's something we can use. Bill scribbled some notes. Got it. And if primary custody doesn't work out, draft the most generous shared custody agreement you can. Make sure it's clear that I want the best for Lily, I continued. Bill nodded, taking it all in. Understood. One more thing, I said, my voice hardening. I want to file a lawsuit against Brian for alienation of affection, and I want to involve his wife, Shannon, in this as well. Make sure she knows everything that's been going on, within the bounds of the law. We should stir things up on their end, too. Bill raised an eyebrow. That's going to be tricky, but we can make it happen. I assume you'll cover the legal expenses for Shannon. Yes. Draft another divorce plan for her, and let's serve both Brian and Kelsey at the same time. I doubt it'll yield huge results, but it'll make things uncomfortable for them. Bill paused. You're looking to stir the pot. Exactly. I confirmed. Oh, and one last thing. I want to sue Kelsey's employer for allowing her affair with her boss to happen on their watch. They may not have a moral clause in their policy, but it's questionable for a company to overlook such misconduct, especially between a superior and a subordinate. I doubt it'll go far, but let's rattle their cage. Bill nodded thoughtfully. Understood. But just know, Luke, this is going to incur some significant costs up front, and it could escalate quickly. There's a lot of manpower needed to pull this off. I chuckled sarcastically. As my dad used to say, engaging a lawyer is just negotiating the price. Bill laughed. Your dad was a smart man indeed. And remember, Luke, you're not obligated to give Kelsey any money from your trust. Your prenup is rock solid. I know, I replied, but I thought it over this weekend, and I've decided that if I leave her financially stable, she might be more willing to agree to my terms. Plus, she deserves it. She worked hard for us, and we were both saving for our future together. This way, she won't have to rely on Brian as much, and maybe she'll see she's better off without him. She deserves better than him, but there's no way I'm letting that cheating scoundrel Brian take more from me than he already has. I mean, my wife should have been enough, I muttered, feeling a surge of anger rise within me as I thought about how Brian had taken over the life that was supposed to be mine. Despite everything, I always try to be fair in my relationships, even if Kelsey didn't reciprocate. My only comfort was knowing that Lily would one day understand why I did what I did when she sees how our family fell apart. Oh, Bill, hold off on filing for now, I added quickly. I want everything ready, but I'd prefer to wait for her to make the first move. That way, I'll get more time with Lily in the family home. I know the moment will come when I'll have to act, but I'd like to delay things until I absolutely can't anymore. Got it, Bill replied. We'll keep everything prepared and notarized, but undated, until you're ready. Just give me a call whenever you decide to move forward. I work from home Saturday mornings, so feel free to reach out. Okay, that's the plan for now. Thanks, Bill. After we hung up, I pulled out Larry's business card and dialed his number. Larry, it's Luke Tanner. How's everything going? I'm good, he replied. Are you ready for some dirty work? Well, sort of. But I need you to hold off for now until I give the go-ahead. No problem, Luke. What's the game plan? Can we meet up? Yeah, give me an hour, I said. When Larry pulled into the parking lot, I was already waiting. After we grabbed some coffee and a snack, he sat down across from me. I want you to gather all the evidence, photos, videos, recordings, everything. Then, we need to figure out a way to anonymously send it to Shannon, Brian's wife. Maybe through email. No problem. I know someone who operates on the dark web, Larry said casually. And what about posting the video on an adult site? Or sending nasty messages to Kelsey's parents or coworkers? Man, this guy was devious, I thought. No, Larry. I still need Kelsey to stay in town. I don't want her so humiliated that she takes off with Lily. And, despite everything, I still love her, even if she doesn't love me anymore. I slid an envelope with $5,000 in cash across the table. This should help get things started, but let me know if you need more. Larry took the money, glancing up at me. I think $3,000 will be enough for now. You can consider the rest in advance for future work. I'll stay on standby until you give me the word. I get why you want to let them make the first move. Keeps them off balance. Exactly. Oh, and I also need you to gather information on Shannon's health issues. Her medical history might come into play later. Can you handle that? Absolutely, Larry said with a nod. And Bill mentioned you wanted to dig into Brian's college years. I'm looking into it now, hoping to find something useful, especially if there's a custody fight. We chatted a bit longer, exchanging stories about his days as a cop and people we might have both known. When we finished, we shook hands and went our separate ways. That was 3 months ago. Now, back in the present, my thoughts returned to the current situation as Bill arrived, followed shortly by his assistant and Larry. "Ready to proceed?" Bill asked as we all settled in. "Yeah, it seems that way," I replied. "Larry, do we know if Kelsey has sought legal counsel yet?" "As far as I know, no," I answered. "I checked her email after Bill's call earlier and didn't find anything. I'll look closer today and should know by Monday morning." Larry gave me a knowing wink. "And what about Brian? Any skeletons in his closet?" Larry leaned forward with a slight grin. "Well, he was under investigation back in his fraternity days. There were allegations involving date drugs and underage girls at their parties. I've got all the records and handed them over to Bill." Bill nodded, confirming. "I've got the documents ready in case we need them for custody hearings." He retrieved the stack of documents we've been working on for months and pointed out where I needed to sign. After I signed, Bill's assistant notarized them, and I turned to Larry. "Larry, can you find out who Shannon Stanton hired as her lawyer and inform Bill?" "Bill, if he's competent, I'd like you to share our legal file with him." "And if he's not up to par?" Bill asked. "Then we'll figure out another way to connect with Shannon. But I prefer to handle this properly." "Understood," Bill replied. "Can I collect the documents Monday afternoon?" I plan to hand them to Kelsey in person first, to inform her of what's happening. "After that, you can officially serve her on Tuesday," I said. Bill nodded. "We'll have someone ready to serve her on Tuesday morning. As for Shannon, we can start reaching out to her on Monday, and I'll share the legal file with her lawyer in the afternoon, provided it doesn't interfere with your talk with Kelsey." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling deeply. Things should be fully underway by Wednesday. "Luke, have you thought about where Kelsey will stay on Monday night?" Bill asked suddenly. "Would it be an issue for her to stay at the house for a few days?" "No, not unless a restraining order is in place and she consents to leave," Bill replied. "I wouldn't share a bed with her," I replied. "Legally, it shouldn't be an issue, but it might make you uneasy. I'd worry about how a less scrupulous lawyer might exploit that information," Bill added. "All right, I'll give her a week to find alternate accommodations. We're not intimate at the moment, so I don't foresee any problems." "Oh, you mean sharing the same bed," Bill clarified. "But our documents give me temporary control of the house and custody of Lily, right?" "Yes, until her attorney files a motion to overturn it, or until we reach a consensus. But I meant actually sharing a bed. It might give off the wrong vibe," Bill explained. "Don't worry, we're not sharing a bed," I said with a sigh. "Hey Larry, what did you uncover about Shannon's health?" "She's been dealing with depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the medications have killed her libido, so Mr. Wonderful went looking elsewhere," Larry said with a grin. "I'm not sure I want to know how you got that information," I remarked, shaking my head. Larry simply grinned, while Bill pretended to be shocked. "Does this have any relevance to our situation, Bill?" I asked. "Not at the moment, but it might become significant later when we address guardianship and living arrangements," Bill clarified. As Bill jotted down notes on his iPad, we discussed a few more details before concluding our meeting and getting back to our respective tasks. I felt weighed down by the responsibilities awaiting me on Monday. Kelsey remained oblivious, as expected. On Sunday, I arranged for my aunt to pick up Lily from school on Monday and keep her overnight, allowing me time to speak with Kelsey about everything. My aunt lives on a farm outside the city, and Lily always enjoys playing with the dogs and helping with the animals. She'll be taking Lily to school on Tuesday, and we decided we'd break the news to Lily that evening. When I told Lily about the plan, she seemed excited to visit the farm, though a little puzzled about why she had to wait until Tuesday. I simply explained that Mom and Dad needed some time alone to talk. She accepted it, though a bit reluctantly. I slept in the spare room again on Sunday night, and once more, Kelsey didn't mention it. In fact, she visibly sighed in relief when she saw me heading there before bed. Lying there that night, I ran through my checklist, reviewing the plan. Eventually, I drifted off. On Monday morning, I called my VP of operations and requested a week off. I also informed my assistant and senior production manager, giving them all the necessary details to handle things while I was away. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I arrived at Bill's office and was surprised to see Larry there as well. There was a stack of papers on the desk, and the office was buzzing with activity. "Matt, we filed the paperwork at the courthouse this morning," Bill said, handing me a set of documents. Here are Kelsey's copies, as you requested. We've arranged for the official serving at your home around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Does that work? Yes, that should be fine. I'll try to convince her to take the rest of the week off. I'll let you know if anything changes, I responded. Great, that's settled, Bill said, pausing for a moment before continuing. Larry found Shannon's lawyer. He's pretty competent, so I forwarded him our files. He's keen to pursue this and might countersue for infidelity, aiming for more than a simple 50-50 split of their assets. He assured me he won't take any action until tomorrow morning, so everything seems fine for now. Okay, gentlemen, are we missing anything? I asked. Just one update, Bill said. It looks like Kelsey has an appointment with her lawyer next week, based on some emails and phone calls. And Matt, please reach out if you need anything else. All right, Larry added cautiously, earning a glance from Bill. Anything more on the ongoing situation? Great, sounds good, I replied, hoping I wouldn't need to dig any deeper into this mess. I guess it was all in Kelsey and Brian's hands now. As I left Bill's office, I sent a quick text to Kelsey. Kel, will you be home by 5:30 tonight? Why? What's going on? She replied. Nothing serious. I was a bit preoccupied over the weekend and wanted to catch up. I've arranged for Aunt Alex to pick up Lily and keep her overnight. I thought I'd bring home dinner. Any requests? How thoughtful. Don't worry about dinner. I'll have something ready at 5:30, she texted back. I felt guilty for setting her up like this, but recently, it had become a common occurrence. I hoped she'd interpret it as an effort to be affectionate. Kelsey arrived home around 5:15 and went to change while I set the table and served the food. I poured us each a glass of wine and sat at the table, waiting for her. When she joined me, she took a long sip of her wine before we started eating. We chatted lightly over the meal, and she seemed completely unaware of what was about to happen. What's your schedule like this week? I asked after we'd finished eating, both of us still picking at our favorite dishes. Are you making plans? She asked, eyeing me curiously. No, I said flatly, but I thought you might want to take a week off after we talk. Why should I do that? She asked, her expression shifting. You'll understand, Kel, I said, sliding an envelope across the table toward her. She looked at it, then back at me, taking another sip of her wine. I'm aware of Jason and your intentions to file for divorce, I stated. I'm aware of Jason and your intentions to file for divorce, I stated bluntly. Kelsey coughed, slightly taken aback, and stared at me with a blank expression. I could see her mind racing, trying to comprehend how I had found out and what her next move could be to slow me down. What scam? She finally asked, referring to her upcoming meeting with the lawyer and Jason's filing against his wife, Shannon. I know you're in love with him and plan to take Lily and leave me. I opened my bag and slid some photos across the table. Her eyes widened as she set down her glass and picked them up, scanning through them. I noticed her eyes beginning to glisten, and a small hiccup escaped her, a sign of her emotional distress. I'm so sorry, Luke. I never wanted any of this to happen. I don't even know what to say, she murmured, her gaze fixed on the table. I understand, Kel. I've known about your intentions for months. I've had time to come to terms with it, to some extent, but it's still incredibly painful and disappointing, I said solemnly, taking a moment to compose myself and suppress the rising anger inside me. The only thing I need to know is, was there something I did or didn't do that pushed you toward Jason? I pressed. Oh God, no, she exclaimed, meeting my gaze for just a moment before looking away. You were a wonderful husband and father. I just fell for him, she confessed, her voice breaking with guilt and shame. I felt a mix of emotions, disappointment, but also relief. If she had simply fallen out of love with me and chosen Jason, there was little I could do to change that. He had taken enough time to win her over, leaving me powerless to stop it. Our marriage had reached its end, and now all that was left was the paperwork. I presented the terms of the divorce and handed them to her. Here's the proposed agreement. I've already filed, so you won't need to worry about that if you agree to these terms. The main points are that the prenuptial agreement stands. My trust is off the table. I'm offering to sell our joint assets and split them equally, including the house. Since I filed first, I'm requesting full custody of Lily and minimal child support. Of course, you'll have a flexible visitation schedule. I'll keep her on my insurance, but you'll need to arrange your own. I paused, watching her carefully as she processed what I'd laid out. You can keep your 401k and any investments from the marriage, as well as your inheritance from your mom. I don't want to take what's rightfully yours. We'll divide the investments we made together, and Lily and I will remain in the house until it's sold. Additionally, I'm providing $200,000 from my trust to help you get settled. I suggest you create a prenuptial agreement if you plan to move forward with Jason to safeguard your assets. I want to ensure you're self-sufficient, so I'm not asking for spousal support. Kelsey's expression was unreadable as she finally spoke. I think I should have custody of Lily. She'll need her mother as she grows up. I wholeheartedly agree, but you can be involved through visits and calls. Frankly, I don't trust Jason with our daughter. I know he'll try to win her over with gifts and charm. Since he couldn't have his own child, he wants mine. I'm being generous in letting him have you, but he's not getting Lily. I understand you'll want to discuss custody further, but let's let the lawyers handle that and try to keep it civil. I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. I offered custody as a peace offering, seeing how Jason interacts with Lily. He won't harm her, but I don't trust his intentions. For now, she'll stay with me until we find a better arrangement. You can stay in the master bedroom for a few nights or a week while you figure things out. Kelsey, I continued, my love for you hasn't wavered. I always envisioned us conquering the world together, but your actions are tearing me apart. I feel like my world is crumbling, and I'm trying to handle this with fairness and kindness. I don't want to inflict on you the pain I'm feeling. But trust me, if you escalate things or let Jason meddle, I won't hesitate to respond in kind. And, dear, I have resources at my disposal that neither of you possess. I could feel the frustration creeping into my voice, and I saw her sense the shift in my demeanor. I can play hardball if pushed. You've seen that side of me before. So please, let's keep this conflict manageable and let the lawyers do their jobs. I want to maintain civility and respect for Lily's sake. She needs to see us being civil. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling deeply. I'm available until the end of the week, and according to legal protocol, you must be formally served. That's set to happen here at the house at 9 a.m. I didn't want to put you in an awkward position at work, so you may want to consider taking a few days off. I know it'll be tough for both of us to share the same space, but I thought we could sit down with Lily tomorrow night, or keep her home on Wednesday, to explain everything to her. What are your thoughts? Kelsey had lost her appetite and looked visibly unwell. It seemed that, for the first time, she was truly realizing the gravity of her actions. She had no one to blame but herself. I was content and oblivious until she disrupted it all, I said, as Kelsey glanced at me, looking bewildered. She conceded, Luke, you clearly had a plan and outmaneuvered us. I'm not sure how, but you did. I'll notify work first thing and stay home until at least Wednesday. Do you think Aunt Alex can keep Lily tomorrow night too? Maybe we'll keep her home from school tomorrow and bring her back Wednesday morning so we can talk. My investigator Larry uncovered everything after I sensed something was off. I'll call Aunt Alex right now. It sounds like a good idea, I said. Kelsey gave a subtle nod when I mentioned Larry, then gathered some papers. I bid her good night, assuming she needed time alone to process everything. I watched as she retreated to the master bedroom and locked the door. Not that it bothered me, since I had already moved most of my things to the spare room. I called my aunt, explained the family situation, and she agreed to keep Lily an extra night, dropping her off Wednesday morning. When I told Lily, she was puzzled but accepting. I assured her that Mom and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I tidied up and prepared for bed, I could hear Kelsey murmuring on the phone behind the locked door, followed by quiet sobs as she mourned our broken marriage. Early the next morning, I heard Kelsey downstairs getting ready for work. Right at 9 a.m., she accepted the package, which excluded the sensitive materials. Shortly after, she grabbed her things and left without specifying where she was going, presumably to meet Jason, her lawyer, or someone else sympathetic to her plight. Later that day, Bill called to update me that both Jason and their company had received the legal claims we filed. Surprisingly, Shannon had also countersued Jason at nearly the same time. Bill stressed the importance of staying vigilant, as Jason had apparently made threats against me. While I never imagined Jason would act recklessly, considering his gains, I took precautions. I retrieved my .45 ACP from the gun safe, ensured it was loaded, cocked, and locked, and placed it on a chair near me while I watched TV. A few hours later, while standing at the kitchen sink, I noticed a black BMW pulling into my driveway. Jason stepped out, enraged, and retrieved a baseball bat from the trunk. Sensing danger, I hurried back to the chair where my phone was, dialing 911. Feeling safer with the door locked, I told the operator that my wife's boyfriend was in the driveway with a baseball bat. As I spoke, I heard a second car pull up outside, followed by screams and voices, Kelsey's. Then came a high-pitched screech that pierced the air. I jumped as the front door shattered from the impact, and Jason burst inside, screaming threats at the top of his lungs. With my hand on the pistol grip, I stayed calm. Jason swung the bat wildly as Kelsey screamed from outside, pleading with him to stop. "I took your wife, and now I'll take your daughter too," he yelled furiously. I allowed him to advance another 5 feet before drawing my weapon. His eyes were narrowed, clouded by rage. Though he had raised the bat above his head, at a distance of 25 feet, it wasn't likely to be effective. The gunshot echoed through the house, deafening in the confined space. My training kicked in, and I aimed instinctively, firing 3 shots in quick succession. Jason slowed, stumbling forward with momentum as the second shot hit. By the time the third round fired, I noticed movement at the door. The bullet pierced the splintered wood, narrowly missing Kelsey's head. She escaped injury, but Jason fell to his knees before collapsing onto his stomach. The house filled with the sounds of screams, the gunshots seeming louder than I had anticipated. Sirens blared as responding officers arrived, uncertain of the situation's severity. They placed Kelsey on her stomach and handcuffed her near the open door, her cries continuing. In the chaos, I suddenly became aware of a gun aimed at me, an officer shouting, "Stop! Drop the weapon!" Coming to my senses, I complied, following the officer's commands. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of chaos and stress. Jason was declared dead at the scene. I later learned through police reports and eyewitness accounts that he had received both my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from Shannon at the same time. It didn't take him long to figure out that the incriminating photos had come from me. Kelsey was with him when he opened the envelope from his wife, confirming that she, too, had a set of those damning photographs. Shortly after, they were summoned to the vice president's office, where they confessed to their affair, unaware of the consequences. Realizing my lawsuit against the company could harm their reputation, management decided to terminate Jason, their managing director, for engaging in an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. In Jason's mind, I had become the embodiment of everything that ruined his life, and he believed I deserved to pay for thwarting his plans. Grabbing one of his prized baseball bats from the office, he set off for my house. Kelsey spotted him through the conference room window on the second floor and guessed where he was headed. She intercepted him in our driveway, trying to calm him down before he could do any harm to me, but it was already too late. I knew they were coming. I had been tipped off and was ready. Kelsey, in a desperate attempt to stop Jason from entering the house, ended up with a black eye when he lashed out in anger. She managed to avoid further harm, but the emotional toll was devastating. Over the following months, she was haunted by nightmares, police interrogations, and legal battles. Though we spoke briefly in the aftermath, neither of us had the strength to dive deep into what happened that day. Kelsey became a hollow version of herself, having lost everything, her marriage, her lover, and her child, in less than 24 hours. She never fully recovered. During the divorce process, Kelsey kept in contact, but only for about a month after it was finalized. She never hired a lawyer, never contested the divorce, and because of that, I was able to secure full custody of Lily with little resistance. But to my surprise, she never claimed the financial settlement I had arranged for her. Bill held on to it for a while, but after a year of no word from Kelsey, he returned it to me. She never returned to the house, instead staying with her family, until she vanished completely. There were a few awkward, supervised visits with Lily, but they rarely went well. Despite Kelsey's unreliability, I made sure Lily was ready for each scheduled visit, whether Kelsey showed up or not. In reality, she only came about once in every 4 visits. As time passed, I learned that Kelsey had fallen into an addiction to painkillers and other medications to manage her spiraling mental health. By the time she disappeared, she had lost her job, her home, and most of her connections. Lily and I had no way to contact her, and it seemed neither did anyone else. Eventually, she just faded from our lives, leaving us to move on without her. We sold the house where it all happened and moved to a new place, closer to Lily's school. It was an attempt to start over, to build something new. Both Lily and I started therapy. I attended for 6 months, but I knew I couldn't stay in that space of grief forever. I had to be strong for Lily, to keep our lives going. Lily, on the other hand, needed years of counseling, working through the trauma of both the divorce and her mother's sudden disappearance. It was a rough road for her, and I often felt powerless, unable to fill the void Kelsey had left behind. 3 years passed before I even considered dating again. I was hesitant, unsure if I was ready. But then I met Jo. She was kind and patient, someone who understood the complexity of my life with Lily. We took things slower than either of us would have liked, but eventually, our relationship grew into something solid. 16 months after we met, we were married. Jo became a steady presence for Lily and me, and though we decided not to have more children, our small family began to heal. Stability returned to our lives, and we found a sense of peace we hadn't had in years. But even as life improved, there were difficult moments. Lily's high school graduation, her college years, where the absence of her mother was deeply felt. I had Larry investigate Kelsey's whereabouts multiple times, but every lead led to nothing. The grim reality was that Kelsey had likely succumbed to the addiction and despair that had consumed her. Though it was hard to accept, we eventually made peace with the fact that she might never be found. It was a painful journey, but we survived. I was grateful I had planned ahead, that I had the right people in my corner. Despite the heartbreak, Lily and I had managed to rebuild our lives. We had to learn to live without Kelsey, but in the end, we moved forward, stronger than before.